If you were able to walk into a room, confident that you would be well received, seen, heard, and appreciated by others, and all it took was a few changes in how you navigate your everyday relationships, would you be willing to make those changes? It is possible to be both fully authentic and to experience the best relationships of your life. Now, here is the host of Navigating Complicated Relationships with behavior expert Michaela Gaffen Stone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Navigating Complicated Relationships. I'm Michaela Gaffen Stone, your host. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst. I'm a nutrition coach. In fact, I have lots of certifications, and I bring them all into play at different times. I also do human design. If you've been listening to my podcasts at all, you'll probably know those things. So sometimes I like to bring different parts of what I know into play, and then other times something will leap out as being, okay, you have to talk about this. This is a thing. And today's topic is laziness. So typically when that word comes up, a whole lot of meaning floods into your mind. Laziness, that's something you shouldn't do. You shouldn't be lazy. Other people are lazy. That person's lazy. Somebody who doesn't do as much as you is lazy, right? You have all these stories about lazy. But let's have a look at that today and see, is laziness really a thing? And that coincidentally is the title of today's episode. So the word lazy, I was curious about that. Like, when did that first appear? Because that hasn't always been a thing. So when did it start? And it first appeared in the English language at around 1540. It came to America with the Puritans. Kind of makes sense, right? Puritans were not known for being warm and fuzzy. They weren't known for chillaxing with a margarita or something. No, it was all about work, toil. You've got to slave away, and any rest was considered to be a bad thing. Then the word laziness came up. It was used in a judgmental way to refer to someone who didn't like work or effort, right? So the word also means feeble or weak in the original German language. And it means false or evil in Old English. So the idea is that lazy people are weak, they lack motivation, and that, of course, makes them morally corrupt and evil, right? And we still carry that nonsense with us today. It's nuts. It doesn't stand up, right? So I'm going to send you a quote right now that I think is great, and then we can examine it. Robert Heinlein, who is a very quotable author, and if you haven't read his stuff and you're into science fiction at all, then seriously, are you into science fiction? You really need to read Robert Heinlein, everything, okay? Quote from him: "Progress isn't made by early risers. It's made by lazy men trying to find easier ways to do something." Now, think about that for a moment. Progress isn't made by early risers. It's made by lazy men trying to find easier ways to do something. Isn't that called innovation? Isn't that motivation to create something functional and helpful? Isn't that why we now live in a society that has drive-throughs, and we have internet at the touch of a fingertip? And if you want to see where somebody's patience level is, give them a slow internet situation or have their computer crash on them and see what happens. How loud is the hissy fit? Probably pretty loud, right? Because we're always looking for the easier way to do something, the quicker way, the simple way. That's human nature. That's how we operate. It would be really counterproductive if we said, oh, you know what, that really is too easy. Let's make it harder. I think harder is much better. When you come across somebody like that, they have issues that needs to be worked on, right? Because that is not how people operate. That is not normal. So is laziness actually a thing? Well, if you follow that quote, no, I would say not. So let's put a scenario out there. It's a Thursday afternoon. Never could get the hang of Thursdays. And you're tired, but it doesn't make sense. You haven't completed any Herculean task. You haven't done anything that's abnormally exhausting. In fact, maybe you did less than you meant to do. So instead of looking at that situation and saying, you know what, I'm tired, I need to rest. Instead of just acknowledging that, you probably launch into this self-chastisement for oh, I shouldn't be feeling tired. I haven't done anything. I have to have worked for that, right? I have to have done XYZ before I can be tired. I mean, seriously, can you hear yourself? Is that actually something you do and you don't realize? If it is, great. Realize it now and stop doing it, because it's nonsense and it's destructive nonsense. It's a spiral of shame. And if you've listened to my podcast before, you know exactly what I think of shame and blame. They need to be given the boot, because shame is used to hold a person down. You cannot function properly from a place of shame, whether you're shaming yourself and saying, hey, I'm a lazy person, or, oh, I don't deserve to be tired. Like, I'm sorry, what? That still sounds really weird to me. But people say it, I hear it. And here's another thing too that stems from this laziness, particularly in the US, but not only in the US. Okay. So everybody else, keep listening. When you're sick and you know your work wants you to go into work, right? Because they always do. They don't actually care how you're doing. When you drop down, the next person will step up. So workplaces don't generally care about that. They just want you to show up. So we buy into that and sort of say, oh, well, I have to just tough it out. I'll go in with my cold or COVID, and, I'll go in and spread it to all my colleagues to prove that I'm not lazy, to prove that I'm not, in the UK, you'd say, skiving off, for example. So again, where does that come from? Does it help you to work when you're sick? Does it help anybody else in the long run when you go to work, cough all over them because you're sick? Actually, no. I have worked in a gym where people show up and they kind of cough all over the place and say, oh, I'm so sick, but I have to do my workout. And they'll do halfway through, they kind of sweat everywhere, cough everywhere, and then leave because they're sick. Guess what happens to the staff and the people that were closest to them physically? They get sick. Great, thanks a lot. That spreads it around. Schools, good Lord, there are a number of reasons why kids go to school sick, but most of them have to do with not having daycare for them or not having somebody that can look after them. And the parent must work. God forbid you should take time off to look after your kid. So you send them to school. And what happens? Everybody at school gets sick and sends it home. These things keep happening. And the root of that is this fear of being called lazy, or the boss is going to hold that over you and say, well, you really could have come into work, so you're not going to get paid today. Stuff like that. It's punitive. It is absolutely nuts. So I'm on a mission to get that word booted out of people's vocabulary. It doesn't need to be in your self-talk. It doesn't need to be in how you look at other people. Because if somebody else isn't working as hard as you, guess what? Maybe they're working on something else in their life. Maybe their energy is being drained elsewhere. Do they have little kids? Did they get 2 hours sleep last night? Have they just suffered a loss of some kind? What is going on in their life? You have no idea. So pay mind to your own work and your own well-being and let them deal with this. Accusing somebody of being lazy doesn't have anybody win, right? You feel morally superior, perhaps. And if you do, boy, seriously, please look at that. Like, is that what you need to make yourself feel good? If you need to put somebody else down in order to feel okay, you have work to do. You have some inner work to do, because that doesn't happen. Like, it's putting somebody else down simply puts somebody else down and reminds them to steer clear of you. It reminds them that you're not somebody who's going to support them. You're somebody who's going to step on them. And you don't want to be that person, do you? I mean, hopefully not anyway. So I'm arguing today that laziness does not exist. It's a belief system, and it hurts our well-being. It hurts our relationships. it undermines your capacity to be compassionate to others. If you view people as being lazy because they're not working as hard as you, or maybe they don't have a job. Oh, you know what? This person doesn't have a job. Clearly they're lazy. Well, that is a whole other podcast about why somebody might not have a job. And maybe they do. It just doesn't look the way you think it looks. Or maybe they're homeless and it's for reasons that you don't know. Of course it is. You don't know. You look at somebody, they're on the street, you have no idea what their life is. But do you think they chose that out of laziness? I'm going to say that is extremely, extremely unlikely. Like, seriously, not. So what is what we call laziness then? What are you looking at? And I'm going to say it could be many things. Procrastination is one, for example. And what's procrastination? Well, it's not laziness. It's a mix of perfectionism and anxiety. Like, if I don't do this thing perfectly, people will think I'm no good at what I do, and then they'll judge me, and they won't give me a good report, and then I won't get a pay rise, and I might lose my job. And you go into this whole future pacing of what if, and then that'll happen. And there's all these disaster scenarios. And meanwhile, you haven't done anything yet, right? And the thing with procrastination is if you don't do something, nobody can tell you did it badly. So there's the perfectionist, right? A perfectionist would frequently rather not do a thing at all than do it and have it be less than perfect, because they can't handle the criticism or the possibility that someone will tell them they're less than perfect. That is a whole subject on its own, but basically it speaks to somebody not being very sure of themselves. They don't have very much self-confidence, and they might be highly accomplished, but they don't believe it. This is where imposter syndrome comes in. And all of those things can look a lot like laziness. So when you use that word, when you're accusing people of being lazy, really, how are you helping them? How are you looking at how you can improve their life in some way, or at least give them some space to get on with whatever it is they're doing? It's not your business, really, is it? So, if you need to get a job done perfectly, have a look and see, how does that land for you? Does it help? Do you get things done? Or are you spending a lot of time stuck in the twilight zone of, yeah, but I can't do it till it's going to be perfect? People will say, I'm no good. Whereas now you're procrastinating and they'll call you lazy. In other words, it doesn't matter what people are going to say. If you're looking for the gup, which is the good opinion of other people, gup, then you're looking in the wrong place, because you cannot control what other people think of you. You cannot control how they perceive you. Their own lens, their life experience is going to control that. So if somebody else is calling you lazy, they have a problem with laziness. They have a problem with the concept of laziness. It is not your issue. So don't pick it up. Leave them with it. It's their problem. Do not look for the gup. Seriously, it's just a waste of your time, energy, and resources. And on that wonderful note, I can't believe we're already at a break, but yeah, pretty much we're there. So don't go away. I have lots to say on this subject, and I'm going to show you what the alternatives can be. What's really going on instead of laziness, and where do we use the term and we don't even realize we're using it? That often happens, right? So stay tuned. Navigating complicated relationships. I'm your host, Michaela Gaffen Stone. This is an important subject to me, and honestly, I think it should be important to you, because it's damaging and it causes a lower self-esteem. Don't do that to yourself. Stay tuned. I'll see you after the break.
What if your relationships could be a source of delight instead of a source of struggle? In a world where human interactions are anything but straightforward, tuning in to Navigating Complicated Relationships with behavior expert Michaela Gaffen Stone will offer you insights, tools, and a whole new level of understanding for you to use right now. Listen for Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send an email to mickey@gaffenstone.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for still being here and still listening to me. I love doing this podcast. Can you tell? The time goes so fast, and I have a lot of things that I want to tell people about. This is something that, along with shame and blame, laziness is a very important topic. It's a word, but it's more than a word. It is a whole psyche of squashing yourself and squashing other people. It is denigrating. And I'm going to give you some history about that shortly. But first, I just want to let you know, somebody in the chat said to me, I'm removing this word from my mouth. I cannot tell you how happy that makes me. That is so good, because you don't need it and the people around you don't need it. So, the thing with laziness, people who care a great deal about something, but they don't get it done very well, or they don't get it done very fast because they're super anxious about it. We're going to, instead of helping that person with their anxiety or finding tools to make things easier for them to get done, we call them lazy. And then they believe that, particularly if you start on kids, right? When you tell kids they're lazy, they take that story and they make it mean something about themselves. And guess what? When you give somebody a label, like you tell a kid, oh, you're stupid, oh, you're lazy, oh, you can't do math, you can't do art. You tell them a thing like that, a definitive thing like that, their life experience is this big, which if you're not watching, is about 2 inches, right? Their life experience is tiny. They don't have a lot of measurement for what does this mean? Is this about me? Is this the other person's problem? No, a lot of adults don't even know to ask that, let alone kids. So kids will just take it and believe it. They make it about themselves. And guess what happens when you believe a thing about yourself? You behave that way. You live to the labels you have. So when you come across somebody who's got great self-confidence and they're just self-possessed and they do all the things with confidence, first of all, that's quite rare these days, but also you can bet that person's never been told they're lazy, right? They don't get shamed and they don't get blamed, because you cannot carry that load and stand tall and confident. It doesn't work that way. So I'd like everybody else to please remove that word from your mouth, remove it from your environment, and call people out on it if you hear them using it, because it's so unhelpful. I can't even emphasize it enough. So the idea that laziness is a moral failing also comes into play when we look at cultural attitudes towards disability, drug addiction, homelessness. I mentioned homelessness briefly earlier. That's quite a mouthful. Those are 3 areas in which people are often blamed for issues that society has created, right? Is it the homeless person's fault that they have a mental illness that hasn't been treated, or they lost their home because of medical bills, or whatever the situation is? Especially in the US, it's pretty darned easy to lose your home. And does somebody want to give you a break? No. I mean, if you owe money to the bank, for example, guess what they do? They raise your interest rates. They make it cost more. If you have tons of money, you have a low interest rate. It doesn't make sense, does it? But if you want to make money, you have to have money. Well, if you want to be successful, then you have to be in a certain place already. And other people will pull you down with words like laziness, because once someone tars you with that brush, it's awfully difficult to get rid of it. So is the US and other countries, are we all becoming lazy nations? Is that what's happening? Well, let's have a look at how you spend your leisure time, because this is pivotal, I think. Some people will spend their leisure time working at something else, right? There's always something to do. You have to be busy, a lot of busy work. And if they're not busy doing something, then they feel like they have, I quote, wasted a day, right? And how does that feel if you think, oh, I didn't achieve anything today, I didn't get anything done today? And the word rest, recuperation, these kind of ideas are just not in your vocabulary. No, I have to keep working. And then there are other people who actually want to use their time off to, I don't know, read a book, chill, do nothing. And they get judged for that. So how interesting is that? You could say that while what you do sort of determines how people see who you are, what you don't do also matters. So if you're going to really embrace your leisure time, be prepared for other people to call you out on that, or to at least give you, the side eye, like, oh, you're resting again, huh? Like, oh, you don't have anything to do. Of course, you have something to do. We always have something to do. The question is, do you really have to do it? So I mentioned earlier that I was going to look at a little bit of history for you, because it's interesting to know where this comes from. We can kind of accept that laziness is a concept that's real because everybody talks about it. It's a concept, therefore it is. Well, I'm going to call bull on that. It's something that was brought in for the betterment of some people by subjugating others, and that was the Puritans, right? They are kind of well known for it, so it shouldn't be a surprise to you. So in earliest America, which is where we pretty much started, laziness was considered as a vice, or it was a luxury that you had to be a very particular person to earn that right. Dreams can come true only if you work for them. You can't dream the thing, you have to bust your tail to go get it, right? And the idea in the US particularly of, if you're not struggling, you're not trying hard enough. I've mentioned this before, and think about that, would you? If you're not struggling, you're not trying hard enough. What would the point to that be? Do you really want to struggle your entire life and then get to the end of your life, look back and say, wow, I really struggled. I nailed that struggle. I did so well at struggling. I am a rock star at struggling. Said nobody ever, right? That's not the point of this existence. It can't be the point of this existence. Why would we even bother with it if it was, right? So is laziness really a thing? Again, I'm going to tell you no. Let's debunk those myths. Let's put out another idea here. Laziness, or what looks like that, can often be a trauma response that you're looking at. That person is sort of paralyzed from taking action. A lot of it can come up as anxiety or PTSD or all kinds of things. But one of the most common factors, I would say, is the trauma responses from childhood. And it's typically where you were told, or more importantly, you understood that you were not good enough, that you couldn't do these things. And when you have that story embedded deeply in your subconscious, how can you do that thing? Your subconscious is going to sabotage you. It's going to stop you from doing that thing because your story is you can't. And your brain's not going to let you lie to yourself. It's going to give you the behaviors that get you what you believe. So let me run that one by you again, because it's important. And I've mentioned it before with focus and so on. What you focus on is what you get. But the other thing is what you believe about yourself, you will do the behaviors that reinforce that. Your subconscious is paying attention. It's the thing that will get you, if you drive to work and you arrive at work and you say, oh, hey, I don't even remember driving here. You don't remember the turns you took. You don't remember how many times you had to hit the brakes to stop at the traffic lights. Your subconscious drove you to work because this is a behavior you do regularly. So your subconscious is like, okay, I got this. You don't have to make any decisions. Here you go. And it gives you the behaviors right? Sometimes you might be driving and you end up in the wrong place because you weren't focusing on the new destination. You went to one you're familiar with. Everybody's done that at some point if they drive, right? So when you use the words I am, be very careful with what you follow that with, because your brain is listening, your subconscious is paying attention and making notes. And whatever you follow I am with, your brain goes, okay. It's not judging. It's not saying, no, I don't agree. It's just, okay, that's what you want. So if you say, I am lazy, all right, your subconscious is going to give you all the behaviors that you could possibly hope for to reinforce that. It's going to agree with you. It's going to give you everything that you're saying you are. So if you say, oh, I can't rest, it's no good. I have to keep doing, I have to keep busy. You're right. Yeah, you won't be able to rest because your subconscious is saying, yeah, no, we don't do that. That's not us, right? That's for somebody else. And if you wish you were resting, but you have this story running that you might not even be aware of, you're going to look at other people and say, they're being lazy because you can't rest. You don't think they should. A lot of this is not in your conscious thoughts, but look at the patterns. That's where you'll see it coming up. Look in the patterns of your behavior. And where do you feel like there's certain things you have to achieve or certain results that you must see by the end of the day, or else, dot, dot, dot. And the or else could be, or else I've wasted my time, or else I didn't do enough today. How often does that happen? And when people get sick, as I mentioned earlier, how often does it happen that you go to work even though you're sick, when your kids are sick? And this is something that really bothers me because it teaches kids how to be adults, right? And that is, the child is sick, so they're home from school, hopefully, and the teacher sends them homework. Now, I don't know what part of the kid is homesick and they need to rest and recuperate gets lost in that translation, but giving a kid work when they're sick tells them they cannot be sick. It tells them that they must keep doing. And that's where we get this whole idea of, I'm half dead, but I have to go into work. It's absolute twaddle. If you don't look after yourself, who else will? Who else is going to be with you? Do you think the company cares? I already told you they don't. They're going to step right over you and go for the next person. That's how companies work, because they're looking for the bottom line. They're not looking at you and saying, oh, you know what? You're looking a little peaked. Would you like to take some time to rest? Said nobody ever in a company setting. That doesn't happen. So what are you teaching your children about laziness? Are you teaching them that it's lazy to rest and recuperate when you're sick? Is that the message they're getting? If it is, if that's what the teachers are doing to your child, sending home homework, I invite you to have a conversation with the teachers and tell them very firmly and very politely that no, thank you, my child will not be doing homework while they're sick. They're not going to like it, but that's what happens when you do new things, when you change a familiar paradigm, when you break the status quo. Now, could we all please pick up our axes and break this particular one? Because it is a nonsense and it causes more damage to people than almost anything else, apart from perhaps shame and blame, which I will keep mentioning. Let's just stop doing this to our kids and stop doing it to ourselves. On that note, again, we're at a break. This is kind of crazy. It's going so fast. I think I'm going to have to ask for a 2-hour podcast and pin you all down and you can just listen to me. Don't worry, I won't do that really. So we're on a break. Please don't go away. You're listening to Navigating Complicated Relationships here on the Inspired Choices Network. And personally, I'm having a great time telling you about this because I think it's really important. I hope you're making notes. See you in a minute.
What if your relationships could be a source of delight instead of a source of struggle? In a world where human interactions are anything but straightforward, tuning in to Navigating Complicated Relationships with behavior expert Michaela Gaffen Stone will offer you insights, tools, and a whole new level of understanding for you to use right now. Listen for Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to mickey@gaffenstone.com. Now back to the program.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. I just want to spell out that email address for you because I do love to get emails and I do respond. So the email address is mikki@gaffenstone.com. Okay, so email me and let me know what you think of this topic, or if it gives you another idea for a topic that you'd really like to hear about. If I can talk about it, I will. If I can't, I won't. It's quite simple, or I might research it if it sounds really interesting. Generally speaking, I find things really interesting. And during the break, someone said in the chat, I never ever thought about that for kids, right? I don't think I did either when my kids were little, and I wish I had realized it then. But you can see that it's true. You give kids work to do when they're sick. The message is quite simply, you don't get to be sick. You don't get to rest and recuperate. Your well-being isn't worth anything. That's the bottom line, is you have to put yourself second to the company or to the school. Now, man, if that's not twaddle, I don't know what is. So who else gets accused of laziness typically? Well, how about people who are neurodiverse, or neurospicy is a nice way of putting it. If you look at somebody with ADHD, for example, if they're not interested in the topic, and let's face it, a lot of stuff you learn at school is kind of boring, right? It doesn't all work for everybody. And I don't think school was ever meant to be interesting. Honestly, I don't think so. At least Montessori schools are, but the other ones not so much. And yes, I'm a little biased. I did teach in a Montessori school, but schools aren't meant to be interesting. So you have a kid with ADHD. They can't focus on something when they've been fed full of sugar with their breakfast cereal. And I assure you, most breakfast cereals are basically sugar. They might have a fruit drink, which is, again, a whole lot of sugar, no fiber in it. Or worse, they end up going to school on a donut and a Coca-Cola. And I've seen this. And then you expect these kids to pay attention and have a good day, right? Get good grades. Sure, that's going to happen on that. You might as well give them crack cocaine. You'll get the same results, right? But this kid, meanwhile, can't focus on the boring topics. So they're called lazy. You're not paying attention. You're daydreaming. All these other things. The parent's probably going to get a call saying, your kid doesn't pay attention in class. Make them pay attention, right? Okay. I'm not sure how you do that, but I'm going to say, you probably don't. And before you start leaping to medication to make the child compliant, which is essentially what we're doing when we give kids ADHD medication, quick caveat, some kids really do need it. They can't focus for 10 straight seconds, and you'll know who that child is. But for the one that's not paying attention in class, and therefore needs medication, that child, I'm going to say, try changing their breakfast first. If they still need meds, maybe, but to give meds to make a kid compliant is problematic at best. So I really invite you to look at what are they eating first. Can that be improved before you look at medication? Okay, that's important. But this kid's going to be called lazy. They're going to get labeled lazy. And that is just going to do a number on their self-esteem. They're already struggling because it's difficult to pay attention to things. And, you know, the deficit part of that label bothers me because it's not a deficit. It's everything comes crashing in all the time. You can't filter out all the racket, the lights, the sounds, the other kids, all the stuff going on. Can't filter all that out to focus on the one thing. So where's that a deficit? It's a surfeit. There's too much going on. And when you ask for that child to have a little space and, you know, a little more time and that kind of thing, you're viewed as being problematic. Whereas it's easier to label the child as lazy, right? For adults, same thing really for ADHD. Autism also can show up in different ways, and we can often call the person with autism lazy. And it's nonsense. Of course they're not lazy. It just doesn't look the way you think things should look. Does that mean it has to have a negative label? That behavior, does it have to be negative? Or is it just not what you do? Think about that for a bit. And then disabilities. So when you have somebody with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I am one such person, you can look at that person and say, well, you look fine. Actually, people with autism often get that too. Oh, you don't look autistic. I've yet to see a picture of what that's supposed to look like, but okay, let's work with this for a minute. So you don't look the way somebody else thinks you ought to look to have this diagnosis that you have. That alone is problematic, right? But when you have a problem with fatigue that comes up frequently, you know, you walk one flight of stairs and you have to sit down for a few minutes because you have a diagnosis that wears you out, or you have chronic pain. Now, if you haven't experienced chronic pain, I can tell you it is awfully difficult to keep going and keep smiling and keep doing all the things when everything hurts. It's exhausting. You don't have to have done anything. Your body's doing it all. Your body's currently having World War III with itself. It might not look like that, but whose business is it, right? So the person with the disability, particularly if they don't look like they have one, that person is likely to be called lazy. Oh, you don't need that. You know, I have come across so many people with EDS who will say, you know, they go to a place like Walmart and they want to use one of those motorized carts because they just cannot get around the entire store. They cannot. They don't have the stamina for that. They have things that are going out of place, that are hurting. They might have broken bones that you can't see because it's something a person with EDS lives with, right? So that person goes for the motorized cart thing and gets abuse from people, right? You don't need that. You shouldn't be using that. That's for old people, or that's for somebody with a disability. And you end up having to defend yourself. Seriously, people, could we just get rid of the notion that somebody intentionally wants to be lazy or would choose to ride around on one of those things if they're older than a teenager? You know, they're not going to be joyriding, right? Have you seen how fast they go? Not particularly. So the thing that's going on for other people, you don't know what it is. Maybe they're working too many jobs. Maybe they don't have enough joy in their life. Maybe they have chronic insomnia. These are things that you can have no idea of. But what you can know is the person you're looking at that you think is lazy, they have something else happening. And that's all there is to it. The word laziness needs to be retired. It needs to be removed from our vocabulary. It needs to be removed from your thoughts because it's putting somebody else in a difficult position if you're labeling them, and you're stopping yourself from all kinds of progress if you're labeling you. And, you know, one of my favorite topics is nutrition. And if you are eating badly, if you're eating a lot of empty calories and you're not getting the nutrients that your body needs, then how do you expect to function optimally? How do you expect to do all the things that are planned in your day? You're running on some pretty low fuel there, and the fuel is poor quality. You could even call it dirty fuel, right? The reason we have so many overweight and obese people in the world these days is because we're eating a lot of empty calories. So, you eat a certain fast food, something or other, you eat that, you're getting tons of calories, you betcha. You could give calories to the entire army, you have lots of those. But where's the nutrition with those calories? Where are the vitamins and the minerals? Where are the other things that we haven't even figured out what they are yet? Where are all the good stuff that your body needs and it's going to take and say, oh, hey, I need to repair that part of you. Oh, your brain needs food. This bit needs food, right? If you're eating chemical crap, then how do you expect to function? So that's something to think about. If you find that you're chronically tired, but you don't have a diagnosis of some description and you do sleep, well, what else could it be? What are you eating? I would love for you to have a look at that and see where you could incorporate real food. Because you know what? If it comes out of a packet or it comes out of a box, it is not real food. It's a product. And you are consuming a product. It is full of chemicals. So if you see the words enriched, enriched means we took all the real vitamins and minerals out because it shortens the shelf life, and we put chemicals back in. Your body does not recognize the chemicals, so it doesn't know what to do with them. It has to store them. It typically stores the chemicals, the toxins, and what have you in your fat cells. And it will store that in your muscles, in glycogen. It will store that in your liver. You don't just pee it out. That is a myth, right? Your kidneys can't do all that work. So it's in your body somewhere and it's not going away. This is just floating around. So you have like this sea of toxins happening, right? And then you expect to be productive, or other people expect you to be productive. And when you're not, you're lazy. If you happen to be overweight or you happen to be obese, how many times have you heard fat and lazy going together, right? The implication being that if you're carrying extra weight, it's because you're lazy. I got to tell you, I've never come across that. I don't believe it for a nanosecond. Quite often, the person that's carrying extra weight, they have a lot of pain in those layers. They are eating emotionally. They are eating for comfort. And they're trying to protect themselves from some pretty big traumas. That's usually what's happening. And then you've got added to that the convenience and the lower cost of junk food, which is nutritionally void. It doesn't have anything in it for you to repair yourself with, for you to build yourself, for you to feed your brain. And so that person gets labeled lazy. And what do you think that does to their self-esteem? Not only does it lower the self-esteem, but when that person wants to get rid of that extra weight, they don't believe they can. And, Henry Ford, love him or hate him, doesn't really matter. When he said, if whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. And yeah, a truer thing that I don't think has ever been said. If you don't believe that you can lose that extra weight, you're absolutely right. It's true. If you don't believe that you can stick to that new diet, well, okay, first of all, you don't believe it, so you can't. But secondly, they're not designed. Weight loss diets are typically not designed for you to keep to them. They're designed for you to buy them. And then when you feel badly because you didn't get through it, the stories of laziness, incompetence, all these things come up, and voila, you go buy another one, right? Do you recognize that scenario for yourself or for other people? I'm going to bet you do. And right now we are back at a break time. We have just a little bit of time left. So I do have some more goodies for you. Do not go away, and do let me know what you think of this podcast, the other podcasts that I've done, and what you'd like in future podcasts. Personally, I'm having a blast, so I hope you are too. See you in a minute.
What if your relationships could be a source of delight instead of a source of struggle? In a world where human interactions are anything but straightforward, tuning in to Navigating Complicated Relationships with behavior expert Michaela Gaffen Stone will offer you insights, tools, and a whole new level of understanding for you to use right now. Listen for Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to mickey@gaffenstone.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm so glad you're still here. You're still listening, and hopefully you're getting something out of this that maybe you didn't know before or you didn't think of before. And that's what I'm here to do. I like to promote you thinking about these topics because we accept so much crap without examining it. And it's time we stop doing that. Critical thinking is no longer taught in schools. I don't know that it was taught for that long in the first place, but unfortunately, it's not a subject. So people will believe what they hear, and if they hear it often enough, they'll believe it to be true. And are you really doing yourself and other people justice with that? I'd love for you to put your thinking caps on and consider these things. How do they affect you? How do they affect other people? Good thoughts, right? So if you enjoy this show, would you please give a 5-star review on iTunes? Search Navigating Complicated Relationships with Michaela Gaffen Stone. I will be so grateful if you can just drop me that lovely 5-star review, and it will assist in getting more information out to people who need to hear it. Because I do believe very passionately that I am delivering information here that will make a difference in people's lives. Just imagine if you can shed that whole nonsense of laziness, if you can stop shaming yourself and shaming other people and blaming, if you can stop doing that, that is a big sack of garbage that you've been carrying around with you that you can just put down and skip off happily toward the horizon, right? You don't need this stuff. This is like chains from the Industrial Revolution that goes around the neck of all the poor people. Do you think if a rich person takes a day off, do you think they beat themselves up for it? I'm going to say they do not. They say, oh yeah, I have earned this hammock by the sea. They feel good about themselves. Well, do you have to be rich to be able to feel good about taking some time off? I sincerely hope not, because most of us aren't going to be that staggeringly rich. But you can enjoy your life. You don't have to struggle all the way through. Look for things to do, busyness, and so on. You just don't have to do that. I think I have time just to tell you this quick story about a job I had once where I worked in a scientific laboratory. And we did special projects, which actually means we did all the stuff nobody else wanted to do, right? And sometimes we would have a gap between projects. We literally didn't have anything to do. And what we used to do in this lab was someone would keep a lookout at the door. And when the boss was coming, they'd let everybody know. We would all grab a clipboard. It was those days, a couple of centuries ago. We'd all grab a clipboard and walk up and down. That was what I was taught to do when I first got there. Grab a clipboard, walk up and down, and sort of look side to side. And so we would do this when we had nothing to do and the boss would arrive. And the boss would walk in, look at everybody walking around with their clipboards, nod, and leave satisfied that we were busy. Is that nuts or what? We could have been studying something. We could have been just relaxing, waiting for the next project that comes in. That's usually, hey, you've got 10 minutes to do this. They give you this big panic button deal with the new project that comes in. Well, if you're well rested, you're going to be happy to jump in, right? So we had this nonsense situation where we'd all grab clipboards and walk up and down. That is a metaphor for busyness, if ever I heard it, where you're just pretending to have stuff to do because you need to look like you're doing something. Otherwise, you're lazy, right? Seriously, we need to get rid of this word lazy. It's crazy. Lazy is crazy, right? I like the rhyme. That was unintentional, but there you go. Now, some people you'll know love to be busy all the time. It is their MO. It's what they like to do. That is how they're driven. You might not be that way. And if we looked at human design, for example, a generator is likely to keep going because generators have that motor center that gives you all the energy to keep going. Yes, it works that way. If you're a projector, your best information comes in when you're resting. So if you're a projector and you're not allowed to rest, you're going to be subpar. You're not going to be working through so well. And if you're tired and a generator, it might still be the case that, yeah, even you need a break. That happens. The trick is to recognizing it, make a contingency for it, and then give yourself a freaking break. And that doesn't mean worry about all the things you're not doing. It means whatever you need it to mean to be resting, whether that's taking a nap, going for a walk, reading a book, like whatever it is for you. But if you don't allow yourself to do that thing, your health, your well-being is going to be decreasing all the time until you run out and your body says, you know what? I'm over this. You're going to need to take a 2-week break because I'm not working anymore. And it gets sick. We have a population of people who are not well, and they often don't realize how unwell you feel. A person doesn't realize how unwell they feel until that feeling goes away. I'm discovering this in the coaching that I do with redefining your relationship with nutrition. And when people start to eat better, I'm finding a lot of my clients are saying, I didn't realize I felt so lousy. And now I don't feel like that anymore. I realize I could feel a lot better. And one of the people that said that to me didn't need to lose weight. That wasn't an issue. But he did need to feel a whole lot better. And through eating nutritional food, real food, the stuff that doesn't come out of a box, that person now has much more energy and feels lively, feels the way they'd like to feel, and they never knew it was missing. Is that a concept? Sure. So where are you using the word laziness to cover up for other things? There could be so many different things happening in any one person. It doesn't even have to be one thing, right? And you don't even have to know what it is that's going on for that person. Just accept that things happen and they don't need to be labeled lazy. Accept that you can take a day off and you're not lazy. You can take downtime and that's cool. You don't have to be productive every single day. Who said we did need to? Like, who put that out there? Well, we kind of know the Puritans had a lot to do with it, but we're not in that era anymore. And we've been so busy giving ourselves all these things to make life easier, but we don't let life be easier. Very paradoxical, don't you think? Would you like to consider that and let me know what comes up for you? You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Leave your comments there. Message me, email me. I am so easy to contact. It's not funny. And I love to answer all the things that I get asked. So let me know. And if you have a topic you'd like me to discuss, let me know that too. And let me just say before I go that next week's episode, I'm going to have a special guest, Katie Cross. She is a fantasy author extraordinaire. I'm excited to be talking with her. And we're going to talk about all things fantasy. And I sincerely hope there's a lot of dragons in there because that's a big thing for me. I like dragons. And if you've been listening to me, you probably know that already. So Mickey, M-I-K-K-I, at gaffenstone.com, Gaffen, stone, like a rock.com. That gets you to my email, my website. It's currently getting a little tweaked, but you can look at it. It's gaffenstone.com. The packages for human design have been taken down now. I still use human design as a tool, but I'm not focusing on it. I am focusing on getting good nutrition into people's bodies so that they can function the best way they can and show up optimally in your life. And no laziness around there, right? So let's see you next week. Let me know how this landed for you today. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Navigating Complicated Relationships show. Michaela returns Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, remember every relationship is a journey, and with the right tools, you can create stronger, more fulfilling connections.